Hi, I'm Brian Katowskis, and this is my story. The summer after my senior year of high school, my best friend Corey somehow convinced me to come train to be a lifeguard at this public pool. After I had taken all the certifications, lifeguard certification, CPR certification, first aid, all the stuff that you need to do, I became officially a lifeguard. And they put me on rotation. The strange thing, the part about this public pool was that every day there were 4 or 5 rescues that happened, maybe even more. But the problem was that there was a slide that went down into 6 feet of water. And most of the kids, of course, loved to go down the slide, but didn't think about how deep it was. And so they didn't really consider if they could swim in that deep of water. The first day that I got up on stand, I was extremely nervous because I was waiting. I knew that there would be rescues that would happen that day. My best friend Corey had told me that I needed to be ready at all times because kids end up going under all the time. It didn't come for at least 2 weeks. I remember sitting up on stand waiting, and kids would come down the slide, or they would jump into the deep end, and I would get ready on the edge of my seat and feeling really freaked out, but ready to jump in. But every time the kids, even though they were struggling to get to the side, would end up getting to the side of the pool. Well, one day, in the 2 weeks into my lifeguarding career, it finally came that I would end up rescuing somebody. This girl climbed to the top of the slide and went down and went right in the water, and instantly when she hit the water she turned around, and I remember her looking at me with this scared look in her eyes. And I knew at that moment I was probably going to have to go in. But I still stood there because I wasn't 100% convinced that she was going to make her way to the side or not. Finally, she bobbed up and down a couple of times and then started to go under, and so I jumped in after her and I pulled her to the side. The great part about that day for me was that's the day I actually feel like I became a lifeguard. Up until that point, I was legally a lifeguard. I had all the training, I had everything that I needed to have to be a lifeguard. But I never really put it into practice, and that day I became a lifeguard that had actually saved somebody. My Christian walk, my relationship with Christ, has been very much the same way. I became a Christian. I grew up in a Christian home. I became a Christian when I was 6 years old. But from the age of 6 until 14, I had never done a lot with my relationship with Christ. I've gone to church on Sundays, been a part of Sunday school. But nothing really clicked for me of how a Christian should live. Well, the summer before my 9th grade year, a good friend of mine, Brad, and I, we were talking about what it really means to be a Christian. And we started asking each other if we were really living a Christian life. And by the end of our conversation, we were convinced that we weren't. And so we committed to each other that we would begin to figure out what it meant to live a life as a Christian. And so we knew the first step was that we needed to get involved in our church and get involved in youth group, not just attending, but figuring out how can we help out, how can we get involved. And so we met with Vernon Rainwater, who was the youth pastor at Northland at the time, and started to talk to him. And the first thing he told us about was doulos, and that it was a group of people that met at 5:45 in the morning on Tuesday mornings, and we spent some time praying together and spent some time talking through Scripture and talking through what it meant to be a servant of Christ. And that's when we really started to figure out that we couldn't be, like I was on the stand, just somebody who had the certification and for all intents and purposes was a Christian, or I was a lifeguard, but not putting it into practice. We knew that for our Christian walk, for our relationship with Christ, that we had to begin to move forward. My sophomore year of high school is when a program called Love started, which is now called Blood Rocks. And it was the first year that the program that got off the ground that first year, and there were a group of probably 25 of us high school students that committed to teaching these middle school students. And that was significant for me because I finally figured out this is how I can begin to serve others. This is how I can begin to live out my Christian walk. I knew it wasn't enough for me just to be someone who had prayed a prayer and accepted Christ as my Savior. I needed to be someone who began to love and serve God and love and serve others.